Hello and welcome back to Lipstick and Luminol. This is episode 5. I just want to say another thank you to everyone who's been supporting me and subscribing and sharing these videos. It's really small, but it means a lot to me that so many people that I know are actively interested in this. So yeah, thank you. It is still Black History Month, and today I will be covering the case of Kendrick Johnson, who, like my previous video, died in an incredibly mysterious way. It makes no sense, and I hope I'm able to do this case justice. So let's go. So Kendrick Johnson was born on October 10th, 1995. He lived with his family in Valdosta, Georgia. I have no idea if I'm saying that right. And he went to Lowndes High School. From now on, I'll just be referring to it as LHS. His family and friends described him as a sweet and quiet boy, and he one day dreamed of becoming a professional football player. However, his life was cut short before he could pursue that dream. Kendrick was only 17 when he lost his life, and honestly, it is, like I said, one of the most mysterious and confusing cases that I've ever come across. He was a very handsome young boy, he was very intelligent, and he was headed towards good things, and something happened to him that no one can explain. On Wednesday, January 9th, 2013, LHS resumed after Christmas break. The high school had 2 gymnasiums. One of them was called the old gym and one of them was called the new gym. In the old gym, there were several wrestling mats that were stacked up against the wall, like rolled in and stacked up. When the mats are rolled up and stacked against the wall, they're about 6 feet tall and 3 feet wide. A lot of the students actually used these mats as like a storage area. They would kind of put things in or behind the mats just to kind of like hide them from other students and stuff. At 1:30, Thursday, January 10th, the school surveillance captured Kendrick walking into the old gym. And I'll link that video in the description. Kendrick was going to that gym because him and a friend shared a pair of gym shoes that they would put inside the mats. And so if one of them had gym, one would, like the last person that had them would put it in the mats. And so that way the next one, when they had gym, they would just go and get the shoes. They just shared them. So several new mats had been added to that old gym, and the mat that had previously been accessible to Kendrick and his friend was now behind a bunch of these new mats that were added to that gym. So presumably Kendrick went into the gym to get those shoes. After Kendrick goes into the gym, he is marked absent from his next class, which was a weightlifting class. He was expected to return home after a freshman basketball game that evening, and after he failed to come home that night, his mom reported him missing. The next day, January 11th, Jackie, Kendrick's mom, came to the school to let the school know that he was missing. And the school actually helped her out a bit. They printed some flyers for her that were all in color, and they seemed to be actively helping look for Kendrick, actively helping his mom look for him. However, at 10:30, a few students were sitting up on what I think was like the bleachers, and they were filling out a survey, and that's when they noticed a sock sticking out of one of the mats. This mat was upright, so it's leaned up against the wall. They climbed further up the bleachers where they looked inside, and that's when they found Kendrick's body. One of the students tried to pull him out, but they couldn't, and another student called 911 using their cell phone. The students, along with a teacher, helped knock over the mat, which you shouldn't have done. It's a crime scene. And they kind of partially pulled him out of the mat And that's when they were hit with the terrible smell of death. This smell was mixed with blood and vomit, which immediately told everyone that he was dead. So obviously the teacher kind of like freaks out and tells the students, you know, you need to go to the other gym. So what had happened was that Kendrick had been upside down like that for 21 hours. So Lowndes County Police immediately began an investigation. However, they didn't tape off anything as a crime scene. They also didn't wear the like blue booties that you would put over your shoes, which completely contaminated the crime scene. They interviewed every student that was in the gym, and everyone's story lined up. Like, it wasn't really suspicious that they had found the body. They weren't really considered suspects or anything like that. There is a video of his body being found. I've been wrestling whether or not to link it, just because it's fine up until you see his feet sticking out, and that's when it's just incredibly disturbing. It's very graphic. If you want, I can directly send it to you, but I don't think I'm going to actively post it with this, just because I don't find it respectful. I don't want it to be like, ooh, look at this. Like, it's a young black man who lost his life. So I want to remain as respectful as possible. 2 pairs of shoes were found in the mat. So the first pair of shoes that were found were on top of his body. So he's inside this mat upside down. The shoes that he was wearing are off his feet, and they're like kind of on top of him by his legs inside the mat. The second pair was the pair that he was getting for gym class. These were on the floor underneath his body. So it was Kendrick, shoes, shoes. Now here's what I don't like. The shoes that were found on the bottom, this was also the only place that blood was found, was inside the mat underneath. The theory is that he was reaching in to get these shoes, he got stuck, and he died. Which, as we'll go on, yeah, I can believe that this is an explanation of what happened. But the thing about the blood is that the blood was found underneath the pair of shoes that he was reaching for, which doesn't make sense. So he's upside down, he's reaching for shoes, and if he died that way, there would be blood on top of the shoes. But the blood was underneath it, and the shoes, the only part of the shoes that had blood on them was the soles. So how in the world did that happen? So Kendrick hadn't been bleeding onto the shoes, which honestly, I just don't understand how to explain. Like, how, even if it was an accident, how did it get into that position? How'd you get into that position where you were bleeding upside down, but not on the shoes that are directly in front of you? The police say that he, according to their work, he hadn't been bleeding before he was in the mat. There was no evidence of him bleeding before he was in the mat. The day after he was found, a reverend by the name of Floyd Rose suggested to the Johnson family that they run an independent investigation, which I agree with. The way that this crime scene was handled was not done professionally. It was done incorrectly. And once again, it was assumed to be an accident. On April 13th, during a public rally, the Johnson family actually went and blocked the entrance to the Lowndes County Courthouse, where they were arrested for civil disobedience. And the Reverend actually put up his home as collateral in order to bail them all out. May of 2013, the Johnsons held a fundraising rally to raise money for the investigation, and Reverend Rose contributed $500, and in total they raised $5,000. I'd also like to point out that The state that Kendrick's body was found in was incredibly disturbing. His autopsy photos are all around the internet. They're everywhere. If you Google him and you Google autopsy or you Google crime scene, you will find these photos. I don't recommend you do, but if you're like me and you find those things interesting and almost helpful when it comes to understanding the case, I do understand why you would go look for them. I'm not recommending it, but because of the way that he was found and because of the way that being upside down for 21 hours affects your body, his face is just so swollen and so just full of blood and every fluid, and his arms are kind of crossed over him because he was in this mat. And his mom actually wanted to make these images public. She wanted to make sure that these images were put out there to say, look at what happened to my child. They are not images for the faint of heart, and I will leave it at that, but they are everywhere. So during his first autopsy, it was said that he died due to positional asphyxiation, which is a thing. That's a thing that does happen and can happen. Specifically, it happens more in infants. However, it can happen if you're in a situation where you're stuck upside down. However, his family really didn't like those results. So June of 2013, they actually exhumed his body and they requested another autopsy. Now, during this autopsy, it gets weird. The autopsy tech found that Kendrick's organs had been removed and replaced with newspaper. A what? And they determined that even though this isn't illegal, it's just not the best practice and that nobody technically broke any laws. I know that's not really suspicious, I just think it's really weird. Like, who's just like, no, I'll take those organs. Here's your newspaper. And the Johnsons were so angry about this. They sued the funeral home because they were not informed of any of this. During the second autopsy, the autopsy tech found that there was blunt force trauma to the right side of his neck, which he wouldn't have experienced if he was just stuck upside down. The way that this was decided was that there was a 2 to 3 centimeter bruise that was on his neck, and I know that that's not like solid proof of anything, but it is suspicious because he didn't have that before, and something needs to hit you in order to cause a bruise like that. But the doctor who did this autopsy doesn't think that he was beaten to death or anything. It was just an observation that was found. Although in the original autopsy, when the photos were taken, the one that was circulated, it honestly looks like he was beaten to a pulp, but in reality what's happening is something called skin slippage, which is just such a gross term, but it's basically when the skin starts to slip from the skeleton and from your muscles. The Johnsons ended up kind of getting in a bit of trouble because they were publicly accusing these two brothers, Brandon and Brian Bell, of murdering Kendrick. I guess these boys had a family member that worked for the authorities and they thought that it was a cover-up. So their father was an FBI agent. So this became a conspiracy that the boys killed Kendrick and that it was just a huge cover-up. Kenneth Johnson, who is Kendrick's father, claimed that Kendrick and Brian Bell had a fight on the bus shortly before Kendrick died. However, it was disproven that the fight was recent. It did happen, but it wasn't as recent as it was thought to have been. Kenneth also claimed that when he went to identify his son's body, the room and the drawer that Kendrick was kept in were heated, which can severely damage any evidence or basically anything that would have to do with identifying the cause of death properly. Although this claim was never substantiated, he claims that it was done on purpose in order to affect any evidence that would have been found. The family also at one point claimed that the sheriff's grandson had something to do with it, which I don't want to discount anything that this family went through. I just think that at a certain point, it's hurting the case that fingers are being pointed rather than the effort actually going to the investigation. I'm obviously completely outside of this. I'm not someone who was directly affected by this case. I just wanted to mention that. I am trying to stay unbiased with this just because it's a really complicated case. It does make a little more sense that it was an accident than Tamla Horsford, but something about it is still just a little fishy to me. So it turned out that when Kendrick's first autopsy was done, this information came out later, that when his first autopsy was done, it was common practice that the organs would be taken out and for them to be disposed of, and they would fill the body with like sawdust or cotton. And filling a body with newspaper is practiced from the 1970s, so it could have just been that the first person to do their autopsy was just a seasoned autopsy tech that, you know, this is how they do it. This is their thing. This is how they go about their style of performing an autopsy. Jackie claimed that this was done on purpose to hide evidence, but I think it was just a choice of that specific person who was performing the autopsy. Something that I find suspicious about this is that the school surveillance was edited that day. The school didn't want to release the video. The attorney put in a motion for the video to be released, but it never was until later on when the attorney for the school board actually made them release it. And it's just suspicious. It's not, they were so against sharing it, which, like, obviously there's a bunch of legalities surrounding, you know, sharing footage from a high school where there's underage students who, you know, they haven't consented to their images being put out, and so many things that I can't even begin to understand because I'm not a lawyer. But the footage was apparently edited. I'm not even close to tech savvy. It's taken me like every single kind of try to even get these videos right, so I can't really comment on it, but according to various sources online, it's been edited and there's issues with it and it's just not correct, and they were shady with releasing it, and everything about it is just, I don't like it. Apparently they were like, oh no, we'll look over the video and we'll let you know if anything suspicious happens. So that's what they did first. They were like, no, we'll look at it. Don't worry about it. Which, like, that's not your job. Your job is to give that video to the police. You don't have to release it to the public, but you have to give it to the police. God, this is quite the look. I need to start planning these things and not just like going ahead and starting right on camera. This case is hard because a lot of people have a lot of opinions on it. I honestly don't know what to think. It's really, really hard because there's clearly evidence where it makes sense that it was an accident, but there's also evidence like the blood being underneath the shoe where, how did that even happen? That's suspicious to me. I don't think it was one of those like cover-up cases like the Johnsons think, but I do think that there is enough to warrant suspicion, especially when they were so hesitant to release the videos in the first place. I really hate that his family just didn't have any closure. It's not like in any death you're gonna like expect that person to just die that way that day. It's always going to be a surprise. But I think for it to be in this manner at such a young age, it's shocking to the family and to his parents, and they just want answers. And I think that although there's a lot of opinions on this case just all over the internet, just on Reddit, on Twitter, everywhere. It's one of those cases that if it is murder, there's not enough evidence to find anyone guilty. But there's also just not enough evidence of it being an accident. A lot of people have looked at this case, and I'm talking all the crime junkies out there, everyone who listens to different podcasts, including myself. That's where I learned about this case. Basically, anyone who has any interest in true crime has somehow wandered upon this case and wondered, how is this possible? Kendrick died alone, and as far as we know, upside down, in one of the most upsetting ways to die. It's honestly created a brand new fear that I never thought I would have, of being stuck upside down and no one being able to help. The part of me that doesn't think this was an accident thinks about how is he not able to knock this down? If you were in there, how are you not able to, like, obviously you couldn't wiggle, but your body weight should have been able to push this mat over. There shouldn't have been blood underneath the shoes. Nothing about the way that his body was found makes sense, whether it was murder or an accident. It's just one of the most upsetting murders / deaths. So if you've made it this far, I just want to point out that this was another case of a Black person who died under mysterious circumstances, where once again the scene where the body was found was not properly taped off. It was not looked at as a crime scene, it was looked at as an accident almost immediately after cops arrived. And this case was treated differently because he was a young Black man. I think that this case would have been taken much more seriously had the victim been a young white man, a young white boy. I know a lot of you watched this and you were like, Sarah, this was clearly an accident. Which, like, yeah, definitely, I agree. It could have been an accident. But it is also just one more case where we don't have answers and a Black life was lost. I think it's important for cases like this where a lot of it doesn't make sense, and it seems that those who cared most about Kendrick, they obviously have a lot of biases in regards to how this case is viewed. They really believe that he was murdered, that foul play was involved. I have no right to decide whether or not that's true. I know that this case kind of takes a different spin than what I usually talk about, but I really wanted to make sure that Kendrick is remembered. This is a case that anyone who knows about it, it just makes them uncomfortable because something happened and supposedly no one saw anything, which is possible. I just don't like that once again it's one more case where we don't have answers, and I truly feel like the scene would have been treated differently if he wasn't Black. We all know that right now, specifically in America, things are bad. When it comes to just the quality of life of being a Black person in North America, it's not even something that I can possibly imagine of how difficult it would be. I don't blame his parents for thinking that foul play was involved, because you're brought up your whole life believing that someone wants to kill you because of your skin. That's not surprising to me that that's what they think happened. I do want to add that the photo of Kendrick that they released, that they made very, very public, I mentioned that he looks very bloated and very disfigured. It was after his autopsy was done. So during an autopsy, they peel open your scalp off of your skull to cut into your skull and check the brain to make sure that whatever the cause of death wasn't brain related. That's one of the reasons that he looks the way that he does. Obviously, the skin slippage plays a factor into it because there was so much going on with the pressure of the way that his body was positioned. I'm sorry if this case didn't kind of quench your thirst for a crazy, super intense story where there's serial killers and multiple victims and all these things, but this is just one story that really makes me uncomfortable. I'm really not sure if I did this case justice or not. It's a lot to unpack, and frankly there's a lot of twists and turns and legal issues that go on that I really didn't feel I had enough information to comment on. I highly recommend looking this case up and kind of doing your own research and listening to podcasts about it and watching other YouTube videos and basically anything you can do to learn more about this. It's an extremely complex case, and I just wanted to do my part to make sure that his name was out there and that people know about him and know about this case and know that we still think about him. And whether or not this was foul play, we see him, we hear him, even though his voice is gone. And as someone who has benefited from white privilege without even realizing that I have, I want to make sure that I'm doing my part. Although the last video I didn't receive nearly as many views as the ones before, that isn't going to discourage me from talking about Black lives that were lost. These lives are important, and I hope everyone can see that too. I hope you found this case interesting, even if you don't think it was murder. I hope it kind of piqued your interest into looking into the difference between how white families and white victims are treated versus Black families and Black victims are treated. I don't think that if a white family had stood in front of the courthouse and locked hands, they all would have been arrested. That's just my opinion. It's obviously not fact, but it's the least I can do to talk about it. Thanks for tuning in to this most recent episode. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you next time. Bye.